The transport ship Meridian's Hope screamed through Kythera 7's atmosphere like a dying star, its hull glowing white-hot as it carved a path of destruction across the barren landscape. Marcus Chen gripped his harness with bleeding knuckles, watching the cockpit displays flicker between red warnings and complete darkness. Beside him, the Nereid diplomat's translucent blue skin had turned an alarming shade of purple. What he'd learned was their species' equivalent of terror. Hull breach in sectors 4 through 7. Marcus shouted over the shrieking alarms. We're losing life support. The alien, Zara, he remembered from the passenger manifest, turned her large, pearl-like eyes toward him. When she spoke, her voice carried the musical quality all Nereids possessed, even in crisis. The atmospheric processors are failing. We have perhaps 3 minutes before the toxins reach lethal concentrations. Marcus's fingers flew across his portable engineering console, trying to reroute power to the emergency systems. 3 weeks ago, he'd been installing water reclamation units on mining stations. Now he was the only human engineer aboard a diplomatic vessel carrying the first Nereid peace delegation in 200 years. The irony wasn't lost on him that their mission to bridge the gap between species might end before it truly began. The ship struck the ground with bone-crushing force. Marcus felt his ribs crack against his restraints as they tumbled end over end, debris raining around them like metal snow. When the world finally stopped spinning, emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows. Status report. Marcus gasped, tasting copper in his mouth. Zara moved with fluid grace despite the crash, her webbed fingers dancing over the alien control surfaces. Primary life support is gone. Secondary systems show 47 minutes of breathable atmosphere remaining. The diplomatic party. She paused, her skin shifting to a deeper blue. They did not survive the impact. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. 23 beings, gone in an instant. The weight of being the sole survivors pressed down on him like a physical force. What about communications? Severely damaged. I'm detecting fragments of the long-range array scattered across a 2-kilometer radius. Through the cracked viewport, Marcus could see Kythera 7's surface stretching endlessly. A maze of crystalline formations and sulfurous geysers that painted the sky in sickly yellows and greens. The planet's twin suns cast harsh shadows that seemed to ride and move of their own accord. The air outside is toxic to both our species, Zara continued, her voice maintaining that eerily calm quality. High concentrations of methyl mercury and hydrogen sulfide. Even with our emergency suits, exposure time is limited. Marcus pulled up the ship's schematics on his console. The emergency beacon is in the aft section. If we can reach it and boost the signal. He studied the readouts. The hull damage extends all the way back there. We'd have to go outside. 15 minutes maximum exposure, Zara said. After that, organ failure becomes irreversible, even for my species. Marcus had worked alongside aliens before, but never in a life-or-death situation. The Nereids were known for their scientific brilliance and emotional control, traits that had made them both valuable allies and frustrating negotiators for human diplomats. Their aquatic evolution had given them advantages in high-pressure environments, but their cold logic sometimes clashed with human intuition. There's another problem, Marcus said, highlighting a section of his readings. The beacon's power coupling is fried. We'd need to jury-rig a replacement from ship components, and the nearest suitable parts are in the forward engineering bay. Zara's skin color shifted to a pale silver, what Marcus recognized as deep concentration. The mathematical probability suggests we should prioritize the communication array reconstruction over the beacon repair. The array components are more widely distributed but offer superior transmission range. That could take days to collect and rebuild. We don't have days. We don't have the luxury of hope either, Engineer Chen. Mathematics does not lie. For the first time since the crash, Marcus felt a flicker of the old tensions that had kept their species at arm's length for centuries. Human instinct versus nereid calculation. Heart versus mind. Sometimes the impossible is just something nobody's figured out how to do yet. Zara's large eyes studied him with an expression he couldn't read. Your species' tendency toward irrational optimism has been noted in our diplomatic files. And your species' tendency toward pessimistic pragmatism has been noted in ours. They stared at each other in the emergency lighting, two beings from different worlds, different evolutionary paths, different ways of thinking, united only by the fact that they were probably going to die together on this poisonous rock. Outside, something howled in the distance, a sound that seemed to come from multiple throats at once. Both of them turned toward the viewport, watching as shadows moved between the crystal formations. The planet isn't entirely lifeless, Zara observed. Marcus checked his atmospheric readings again. And whatever's out there doesn't seem friendly to visitors. The ship creaked around them, settling into the alien soil. Somewhere in the distance, that multiple-throated howl echoed again, closer this time. We need to make a decision, Marcus said. Work together or die separately. Zara's skin rippled through several colors before settling on a determined azure. Then we work together, Engineer Chen. Though I suspect we will discover that our species' differences run deeper than diplomatic reports suggest. Call me Marcus, and you're probably right. She almost smiled. Call me Zara, and I hope you're wrong. The emergency suits felt like prisons as Marcus and Zara prepared for their first venture outside. Marcus's human design here was bulky but familiar, while Zara's form-fitting nereid suit shimmered like liquid mercury, adapting to her unique physiology. They had decided to retrieve the beacon's power coupling first, a compromise between human urgency and nereid logic. Remember, 15 minutes maximum, Zara said, checking her suit's filtration systems. The methylmercury will begin crystallizing in our bloodstreams after that point. Marcus sealed his helmet, feeling the suit's recycled air against his face. 15 minutes to cross 200 meters of unknown terrain, locate components in wreckage, and return. No pressure. They cycled through the airlock together, and Marcus got his first real look at Kythera 7's surface. The crystal formations weren't just decorative. They pulsed with an internal bioluminescence that created a hypnotic light show across the landscape. Between them, pools of what looked like liquid silver bubbled and steamed. Those are mineral springs, Zara explained, following his gaze. The spectral analysis suggests they're rich in rare earth elements. This planet might have been a mining prospect once. Before something went wrong, Marcus added, noting the scattered debris that clearly wasn't from their ship. Other vessels had crashed here, their remains picked clean by time and the planet's corrosive atmosphere. They moved carefully toward the aft section, their boots crunching on soil that glittered with metallic particles. The gravity was lighter than Earth normal, but heavier than nereid standard, making every step feel slightly wrong for both of them. Movement, 3 o'clock, Zara whispered. Marcus turned to see something flowing between the crystals, not walking or running, but moving like liquid given form. It was roughly humanoid, but seemed to shift and change as they watched. What the hell is that? Native life, I assume. Carbon-silicon hybrid structure based on the way it refracts light. Zara's scientific mind was working even in crisis. Fascinating evolutionary adaptation to the toxic environment. The creature paused, and Marcus could swear it was watching them. Then it melted back into the crystal maze, leaving only the faint sound of something wet sliding across stone. Friendly neighbors, Marcus muttered. They reached the wreckage of the aft section, where twisted metal and scattered components told the story of their violent arrival. Marcus began scanning for the power coupling, while Zara monitored their environment and remaining time. 7 minutes elapsed, she reported. Your heart rate is elevated. Yours isn't. Neurite physiology doesn't respond to stress the same way. Our hearts simply become more efficient. Marcus found the coupling buried under a collapsed bulkhead. As he worked to extract it, he couldn't help but think about the differences between them. Humans ran on adrenaline and emotion, while Nereids operated on pure efficiency. It was a miracle their species had ever managed to communicate at all. 11 minutes, Zara announced. We should return. Almost got it. The coupling came free with a shower of sparks. There. They turned to head back, but the path was no longer clear. 3 of the liquid creatures had emerged from the crystals, blocking their route. Up close, Marcus could see they were beautiful in an alien way, like living glass sculptures that caught and reflected the strange light of Kythera 7's twin suns. They don't appear hostile, Zara observed. Curious, perhaps. Curious about whether we taste good. One of the creatures flowed closer, its form shifting from roughly humanoid to something more abstract. It reached out with what might have been an arm, stopping just short of touching Marcus's suit. 13 minutes, Zara said quietly. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. Marcus made a decision that would have horrified the mission's diplomatic staff. He reached out and touched the creature's extended appendage. The contact sent a shock through both of them. Not electrical, but something deeper. For a moment, Marcus felt a presence in his mind, alien and vast, examining his thoughts with gentle curiosity. The creature flowed backward, and its companions parted, creating a clear path back to the ship. Remarkable. Zara breathed. They're telepathic. I felt it too. They ran the remaining distance, diving through the airlock with 30 seconds to spare. As they went through decontamination, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they'd been judged and found acceptable. The natives don't seem hostile, he said as they removed their suits. Maybe they're just curious about visitors. Or they're deciding whether we pose a threat to their territory. Zara's pragmatism remained intact despite the strange encounter. We shouldn't assume benevolence based on one interaction. Marcus began examining the power coupling, looking for ways to adapt it to the beacon. You know, back there, when you felt that creature's telepathic touch, what did you sense? Zara paused in her post-exposure medical checks. Intelligence. Ancient intelligence. And something else I couldn't quite identify. She looked at him with those large, pearl-like eyes. What did you sense? Loneliness. They've been alone on this planet for a very long time. Interesting. Your mind interpreted the contact emotionally, while mine focused on cognitive assessment. Another difference between our species. Marcus found himself smiling despite their situation. Maybe that's not a weakness. Maybe that's why we need each other. Zara's skin rippled through several colors before settling on a warm coral hue. Perhaps you're right, Marcus. Perhaps our differences are not obstacles but tools. Outside, the liquid creatures moved between the crystals, and Marcus wondered if they were watching the ship with the same curiosity he felt about them. 2 alien species meeting for the first time, trying to understand each other across vast evolutionary gaps. Just like him and Zara. The beacon repair took 6 hours of painstaking work. Marcus's hands cramped from manipulating the delicate circuitry, while Zara provided calculations and component analysis. They'd fallen into an efficient rhythm, his intuitive problem-solving complementing her mathematical precision. Power coupling is stable, Marcus announced, wiping sweat from his forehead. Signal strength should be sufficient to reach the nearest trade route. Zara studied the readings on her console. Transmission will require 47 minutes to reach the designated communication relay. Response time, assuming immediate dispatch of rescue vessels, is approximately 18 hours. 18 hours. Marcus leaned back against the bulkhead. Think we can survive that long? Food supplies are adequate for 72 hours. Water recycling is functioning at 60% efficiency. The primary concern remains life support. Zora's skin shifted to a pale yellow. What he'd learned indicated concern. Ship's atmosphere will become toxic in approximately 14 hours. Marcus felt his heart sink. They'd solved one problem only to face another. What about the environmental suits? Could we survive in them until rescue arrives? Negative. Suit life support is designed for short-term emergency use. Maximum operational time is 6 hours before CO2 scrubbers fail. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their situation settling between them. Through the viewport, they could see the liquid creatures moving among the crystals, their forms catching and reflecting the strange light. There might be another option, Marcus said slowly. The creatures outside, they are obviously adapted to this environment. If we could find their shelter, understand how they survive. You're suggesting we abandon the ship and trust our lives to alien beings we've had one brief encounter with. I'm suggesting we explore all possibilities before we suffocate. Zara's large eyes studied him with that unreadable expression again. Your species' tendency toward desperate gambits continues to fascinate our xenobiologists. And your species' tendency to calculate the odds of everything continues to frustrate our diplomats. Despite the gravity of their situation, Zara made a sound that might have been laughter. Perhaps that's why we were chosen for this mission. Your ambassador specifically requested an engineer known for creative problem-solving, while our council selected a scientist trained in xenobiological adaptation studies. Marcus blinked. You're saying this wasn't an accident? Our being paired together. Not the crash, obviously, but our selection for the same transport. The diplomatic corps of both our species are more calculating than they appear. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as atmospheric readings spiked into dangerous territory. Hull breach in Section 3, Zara reported, her fingers dancing over the controls. The crash damage is spreading. We have perhaps 2 hours before life support fails completely. Marcus felt panic trying to claw its way up his throat. 2 hours, not 18. 2. Options. We seal ourselves in the engine compartment. Life support might last an additional 4 hours there. Or, Zara's skin cycled through several colors before settling on determined blue. Or we make contact with the natives and hope your intuition about their benevolence is correct. Another alarm joined the chorus, and Marcus could smell something burning in the ship's recycling systems. The decision was being made for them. Suits, he said. They prepared quickly, checking and double-checking their equipment. This time, they'd be outside for much longer than 15 minutes. This time, they might not be coming back. As they cycled through the airlock, Marcus activated the beacon. Whatever happened next, at least rescue teams would know where to look for their remains. The liquid creatures were waiting for them. Not aggressively, they maintained a respectful distance, but clearly with purpose. The largest of them flowed forward, and once again Marcus felt that strange telepathic touch as it brushed against his mind. Images flooded his consciousness. Caverns beneath the crystal formations, spaces where the air was filtered and purified by the living rock itself. Chambers where the creatures dwelled in something resembling cities, their fluid forms merging and separating in complex social patterns. And something else, a sense of invitation, of sanctuary offered to stranded travelers. They're offering us shelter, Marcus gasped, staggering under the intensity of the mental contact. Zara steadied him, her own eyes wide with wonder. I felt it too. They'd done this before, helped other crashed survivors, the debris we saw earlier. Other ships, other species. Marcus looked at the creatures with new understanding. You're rescue workers. This is what you do. The largest creature pulsed with soft bioluminescence, and Marcus interpreted it as agreement. They began moving toward the crystal formations, gesturing for the 2 survivors to follow. Our suits won't last long enough to reach their caverns, Zara said, checking her readings. Then we'll have to trust them completely. As they followed the creatures deeper into the crystal maze, Marcus realized they were crossing a threshold. Behind them lay the familiar: damaged technology, calculated risks, the protocols of civilized space. Ahead lay the unknown: alien hospitality, environmental adaptation, survival through cooperation with beings so different from themselves that communication required touching minds. Marcus, Zara said softly as they walked. When we reach their shelter, when we're breathing their processed air and depending on their protection, we'll be completely vulnerable. Your species and mine have spent centuries building walls between ourselves and others. This will require tearing all of them down. Marcus watched the creatures flowing gracefully ahead of them, their forms shifting and changing like living poetry. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe not, Zara agreed. But it will change us, both of us. We may not be the same beings who crashed on this planet. Would that be so terrible? Zara's skin rippled through shades of blue and silver before settling on something Marcus had never seen before: a warm gold that seemed to glow from within. No, she said. I don't think it would be terrible at all. The caverns beneath Kythera 7's surface defied every assumption Marcus had made about alien architecture. The walls weren't carved or built, they were grown, shaped by centuries of interaction between the liquid creatures and the living crystal formations. Bioluminescent veins pulsed through the stone, providing soft, changing light that reminded him of ocean waves. Atmospheric composition is remarkable, Zara breathed, having removed her helmet after the creatures demonstrated the air's safety. Oxygen-nitrogen mix within acceptable parameters for both our species. The crystal formations are actually processing the toxic surface gases. Marcus watched their hosts moving through chambers that flowed together like connected pools. The creatures' fluid forms allowed them to navigate spaces that would have been impossible for rigid beings. They've turned the entire underground into a living filtration system. A group of smaller creatures approached them, their movements curious and gentle. When they made contact, Marcus felt their thoughts, not words, but emotions and images that conveyed meaning more directly than language ever could. They were being welcomed, not just as guests, but as additions to the community. They want to share their knowledge with us, Zara said, her eyes wide with wonder. Their understanding of environmental adaptation, biological harmony, survival through cooperation. What do they want in return? The answer came not from Zara, but directly into their minds through the creature's telepathic touch. Stories, experiences, the knowledge and perspectives that came from traveling between stars, from being members of vast interstellar civilizations. They're isolated here, Marcus realized. They've helped other survivors over the years, but they've never had guests who could truly communicate with them. One of the larger creatures flowed closer and extended what might have been an arm. When Marcus touched it, images flooded his mind: the planet's history, the gradual environmental collapse that had driven the natives underground, their evolution from individual beings into a collective consciousness that maintained individual identity while sharing all knowledge and experience. They're offering to teach us their adaptation techniques, Zara whispered, her own connection showing her similar visions. Not just survival, true integration with the environment. Marcus saw what she meant. The process would change them, alter their biology to better process the planet's atmosphere, enhance their ability to communicate telepathically, integrate them into the collective consciousness while preserving their individual minds. It's irreversible, he said. Yes. We've become something new. Not quite human, not quite nereid, not quite like them. Yes. They looked at each other in the soft, pulsing light of the living caverns. Around them, the liquid creatures waited patiently, their forms shifting gently as they maintained respectful distance from the decision. The rescue ships will come, Zara said finally. Our beacon signal will guide them here. And when they arrive, they'll find us changed. Our people might not accept what we've become. Zara's skin rippled through complex patterns of color. The diplomatic mission was about building bridges between species. Perhaps this is a different kind of bridge than anyone expected. Marcus felt the weight of the choice. Safety meant accepting transformation, becoming something unprecedented. A hybrid not just of genetics, but of consciousness itself. The creatures were offering them life, but it would be a life unlike anything either of their species had ever known. There's something else, Zara said softly. The process requires complete trust, complete openness between participants. No barriers, no secrets, no cultural walls. We would share everything, every memory, every fear, every hope. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Complete intimacy with Zara, with the creatures, with the collective consciousness. Every petty prejudice, every moment of doubt, every private shame laid bare. Your people and mine would have to accept not just our physical transformation, but the fact that we've become emotionally and mentally connected to each other and to an alien collective. The ultimate diplomatic scandal, Zara said, but there was something almost like humor in her voice. One of the creatures approached again, and through its touch, they felt the other's experiences, previous survivors who had made this choice, beings from different species who had found new life and purpose in this underground sanctuary. But also those who had chosen to wait for rescue, maintaining their original forms until ships arrived to take them home. We don't have to decide now, Marcus said. They'll keep us alive either way. But the offer won't remain open indefinitely. The integration process requires time. Time we might not have if we wait too long. They sat together in the alien cavern, surrounded by beings of liquid light, contemplating a choice that would define not just their survival, but their entire future. Above them, the toxic surface waited. Beyond that, the stars held their respective civilizations, cultures that had spent centuries learning to tolerate each other's differences without ever truly bridging them. What do you think our peoples would learn from this? Marcus asked. If we chose integration and somehow made it back to tell them about it. Zara's expression was thoughtful. That the walls between species are more fragile than we believed. That consciousness and identity are more flexible than our philosophers imagined. That cooperation can go deeper than treaties and trade agreements. Or they might decide we've been corrupted by alien influence and quarantine us as contaminated specimens. Also possible. The creatures around them pulsed with gentle bioluminescence, their patience seeming infinite. Time flowed differently here, measured not in desperate minutes, but in the slow rhythm of collective thought and shared experience. Zara, Marcus said finally, if we do this, if we choose integration, what do you think we'll become? Her skin cycled through colors he'd never seen before, patterns that seemed to reflect the cavern's living light. Something new, she said. Something that's never existed before. A bridge not just between our species, but between individual consciousness and collective awareness. Are you afraid? Terrified, she admitted. And you? Marcus laughed, surprising himself. Absolutely. But also, curious. This might be the greatest adventure either of our species has ever had the chance to experience. Above them, the crystal formations pulsed with life, and around them, beings of living water waited for their answer. The decision came gradually, not in a single moment of revelation, but through hours of communication with their hosts. As Marcus and Zara learned more about the collective consciousness, their fear began transforming into fascination. The creatures maintained their individual identities while sharing a deeper connection, not a loss of self, but an expansion of it. The process begins with respiratory adaptation, explained one of the beings through telepathic images. Your lungs will develop additional filtration structures, allowing you to process the planet's atmosphere directly. Zara studied the biological schematics flowing through her mind. Fascinating. It's not genetic manipulation, but guided evolution. Accelerated adaptation using the planet's unique mineral compounds. The neural changes come next, continued their host. Enhanced connectivity between consciousness centers, allowing for telepathic communication while preserving individual thought patterns. Marcus felt a flutter of anxiety. And the collective consciousness. Optional integration. You choose how much to share, when to connect, when to maintain privacy. It's not absorption. It's expansion of choice. They were given time to process this information, to walk together through the living caverns and contemplate their future. The beauty of the underground sanctuary was overwhelming. Chambers filled with crystalline formations that sang in harmonic frequencies, pools of mineral-rich water that glowed with bioluminescent organisms, galleries where the creatures created art from their own flowing forms. This isn't just survival, Zara observed. It's culture, civilization. They've created something beautiful here, and they're offering to share it with us. They found themselves in a vast chamber where the ceiling opened to the surface far above, allowing filtered sunlight to create natural spotlights on the living floor. Other survivors were there, beings from species Marcus didn't recognize, all transformed by the integration process, yet clearly retaining their original personalities and perspectives. "How long have you been here?" Marcus asked a creature that had once been humanoid, but now possessed characteristics of both its original form and the liquid natives. 17 cycles of your standard years, came the telepathic response. I was a trader whose ship failed during a storm. The choice to integrate gave me not just life, but purpose. Do you miss your home? I carry my home within me now. My memories, my culture, my identity, all preserved and enhanced. But I've also gained new perspectives, new capabilities, new relationships that would have been impossible in my original form. Zara approached another integrated being, this one clearly once from an aquatic species similar to her own. The conversation that followed was largely telepathic, but Marcus could sense its emotional content through the ambient connection that pervaded the caverns. She says the integration enhanced her scientific abilities. Zara explained afterward. The collective consciousness provides access to thousands of years of accumulated knowledge, but filtered through individual perspective and creativity. What about rescue? Has anyone ever chosen to leave after integration? The answer came from multiple sources simultaneously. Yes, some had chosen to return to their original civilizations, carrying knowledge and perspectives that had profoundly impacted their peoples. Others had become ambassadors, traveling between worlds to share understanding of consciousness expansion and cooperative evolution. We wouldn't be trapped here, Marcus realized. We'd be transformed here, then free to choose our path. That evening, though time had little meaning in the eternal twilight of the caverns, they sat together beside one of the glowing pools, watching the liquid creatures move through their ancient dance of community and individual expression. I've been thinking about the diplomatic mission, Zara said, about why our species have struggled to truly understand each other despite centuries of contact. Communication barriers, consciousness barriers. We've been trying to bridge the gap between human emotional intuition and neuride logical analysis without recognizing that both approaches are incomplete. The collective consciousness here doesn't choose between them. It integrates them. Marcus nodded slowly. So this wouldn't just be about our survival. It would be about proving that deeper integration between species is possible. More than possible. Revolutionary. They made their decision that night. The integration process began at dawn, in a ceremony that was part science, part art, part spiritual transformation. Marcus and Zara lay in pools of mineral-rich water while the creatures guided microscopic organisms into their bloodstreams. The changes were gradual but profound. Enhanced lung capacity, improved neural connectivity, heightened sensory awareness. The telepathic connection developed slowly, beginning with emotional resonance and gradually expanding to include thought sharing. Marcus felt Zara's scientific wonder as she experienced the transformation from within, while she sensed his engineering mind analyzing and adapting to each new capability. But the most profound change was the slow opening of their consciousness to the collective. It wasn't an invasion or a loss of privacy. It was like discovering that their individual minds had been single instruments in an orchestra they'd never known existed. "I can feel your memories," Zara whispered as the process reached its peak. "Your childhood fascination with taking apart mechanical devices, your first glimpse of the stars, your loneliness as the only human engineer on deep space assignments." "And I can feel yours," Marcus replied. "Your excitement at discovering new forms of aquatic life, your frustration with the rigid social structures of Nereid society, your hope that this diplomatic mission might change the relationship between our species." Around them, the collective consciousness welcomed them with gentle warmth, offering knowledge and perspective while carefully preserving their individual identities. They remained Marcus and Zara, human and Nereid, but they had also become something new. Hybrid beings capable of bridging not just the gap between their species, but between individual and collective consciousness itself. The transformation was complete just as distant sensors detected the approaching rescue fleet. "Perfect timing," Marcus said, his enhanced senses already picking up the electromagnetic signatures of the approaching ships. "Now comes the real test," Zara replied, "explaining to our peoples what we've become, and what it might mean for the future of interspecies relations." Hand in hand, they rose from the pools, their transformed bodies glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns that marked them as members of a new kind of community, one that transcended species, planets, and the ancient barriers between self and other. The rescue fleet arrived in a blaze of fusion drives and flashing navigation lights, their signals cutting through Kythera 7's toxic atmosphere like beacons of civilization. Marcus and Zara watched from the surface as 6 ships of different designs, human, Nereid, and 3 other species, arranged themselves in orbital formation. "Quite a response for 2 missing diplomats," Marcus observed, his enhanced senses picking up the electromagnetic chatter between the vessels. "News of the first joint human-Nereid diplomatic mission disappearing has probably caused significant political concern," Zara replied, her own transformed awareness processing the incoming data streams. Their integration was complete but subtle. To casual observation, they appeared much as they had before. Marcus still recognizably human, Zara still clearly Nereid. But beneath the surface, the changes ran deep. Their breathing was effortless in the toxic atmosphere, their minds connected not just to each other, but to the vast network of consciousness that flowed through the planet's underground community. The first shuttle to land was human military, bristling with sensors and weapons. Marcus felt the collective consciousness recoil slightly at the aggressive posture, then settle into patient observation. The liquid creatures had witnessed many rescues over the centuries, some peaceful, some confrontational, all eventually resolved through patience and understanding. "Survivors identified," came the mechanical voice from the shuttle's external speakers. Marcus Chen, Human Engineering Corps. Zara of the Deep Currents, Nereid Scientific Collective. "Please approach for immediate medical evacuation." They walked toward the shuttle hand in hand, a gesture that caused immediate consternation among the rescue team. Through the open airlock, Marcus could see armed soldiers in full environmental suits, their body language radiating tension and suspicion. "Sir, ma'am, please separate and proceed to decontamination chambers," the team leader commanded. "We need to verify your identities and check for pathogenic contamination." "We understand your protocols," Zara said, her voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate through the shuttle's hull. "But we've undergone significant physiological adaptation during our time here. Standard decontamination procedures may not be appropriate." The soldiers exchanged glances that Marcus could read even through their helmet displays. Fear, confusion, and the rigid adherence to procedure that military personnel fell back on when faced with the unknown. "Please comply with evacuation protocols," the team leader repeated. "Medical assessment will be conducted aboard the primary vessel." As they submitted to the various scans and sample collections, Marcus and Zara maintained their mental connection, sharing impressions and concerns. The rescue team's equipment was detecting the changes in their biology but interpreting them as contamination rather than adaptation. Their readings show significant alteration to lung structure, neural pathways, and cellular composition, one technician reported. Possible alien pathogen influence. We're not infected, Marcus said calmly. We've undergone voluntary biological integration with the planet's native species. It was necessary for survival, and it's given us unprecedented insights into collective consciousness and interspecies cooperation. The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Sarah Kim, the expedition's chief xenobiologist, leaned forward with intense curiosity. You're claiming you've been genetically altered by alien beings. Not altered, enhanced, Zara corrected. The process preserves and expands our original biology while adding new capabilities. We can demonstrate. Before anyone could stop her, Zara removed her helmet and breathed deeply of the shuttle's recycled air. Then, deliberately, she opened the airlock's inner seal and inhaled the toxic atmosphere outside. The monitoring equipment registered no distress, no cellular damage, no adverse reactions of any kind. Impossible, breathed Dr. Kim. The atmospheric composition should be lethal to neuride physiology. It was, Zara agreed, but it isn't anymore. The return journey to the fleet became an extended debriefing session. Marcus and Zara found themselves in the unusual position of being simultaneously the subjects of scientific study and the sources of diplomatic intelligence. Every conversation was recorded, every biological sample analyzed, every statement cross-referenced against established xenobiological databases. The implications are staggering, Dr. Kim confided during one of their sessions. If voluntary biological integration with alien species is possible, it could revolutionize our understanding of evolution, consciousness, and interspecies relations. Or terrify our political leaders into declaring us contaminated specimens, Marcus replied. We're not naive about the potential reactions. Through their enhanced consciousness, they could feel the collective awareness of the planet below, watching and waiting. The liquid creatures understood that this moment would determine not just Marcus and Zara's fate, but the future relationship between their ancient civilization and the younger species that traveled between stars. The real test came when they reached the flagship, a massive diplomatic vessel jointly operated by human and neuride crews. The reception committee included Admiral Sarah Chen, no relation to Marcus, despite the name, Pi Current Thalas of the Nereid Deep Council, and representatives from 3 other allied species. The preliminary medical reports are concerning. Admiral Chen began, her weathered face showing the strain of command decisions. Our xenobiologists are detecting fundamental alterations to your cellular structure, neural pathways, and consciousness patterns. From a security standpoint, we have to consider the possibility of alien influence or control. We understand your concerns, Marcus replied, his enhanced empathy allowing him to sense the fear and uncertainty radiating from the assembled officials. But we're still ourselves. If anything, we're more ourselves than we've ever been. Pi Current Thalas, whose ancient form rippled with the deep blues of skepticism, spoke in the flowing tones of formal Nereid discourse. The concept of voluntary biological integration with alien consciousness violates fundamental principles of species integrity. How can we be certain that the beings before us retain their original loyalties and perspectives? Zara stepped forward, her transformed biology allowing her to match the high current's formal speech patterns while adding harmonics that no unenhanced Nereid could produce. Because we can demonstrate it, honored Thalas. We retain all our memories, all our cultural knowledge, all our emotional connections to our birth species. But we've also gained something unprecedented: direct access to a form of consciousness that bridges individual identity with collective awareness. Show us, challenged Dr. Vex, the Altarian representative whose crystalline form flickered with analytical patterns. Marcus and Zara exchanged a glance that carried layers of meaning invisible to their observers. Then, together, they reached out with their enhanced consciousness, creating a gentle telepathic bridge that allowed the assembled officials to experience, for just a moment, what they had become. The effect was immediate and profound. Admiral Chen staggered as she felt Marcus's memories of the crash, his fear, his gradual trust in Zara, and his wonder at discovering the underground civilization. High-current Thalas's form shifted through colors that indicated deep shock as she experienced Zora's scientific fascination with the integration process and her joy at transcending the limitations of single-species thinking. By the deep currents, Thalas whispered, "You're still yourselves, but more. Expanded." "The question," said Dr. Vex, her crystalline structure resonating with new harmonics, "is whether this expansion represents evolution or contamination." Over the following days, Marcus and Zara underwent extensive testing, evaluation, and interrogation. They submitted to every scan, answered every question, and demonstrated their enhanced capabilities while carefully maintaining their individual personalities and cultural identities. The breakthrough came when they volunteered for a controlled experiment. Using their telepathic abilities, they facilitated direct communication between human and Nereid crew members who had previously struggled with cultural barriers. The results were remarkable. Misunderstandings that had persisted for months were resolved in minutes. Collaborative projects that had stalled due to communication problems suddenly flourished. "It's not just translation," observed Dr. Kim during one session. "They're providing emotional and cultural context that pure language can't convey. They're showing us how to truly understand each other." But not everyone was convinced. Captain Hendricks, the human military attaché, remained deeply suspicious. Enhanced abilities, telepathic influence, altered loyalty patterns. These are classic signs of alien mind control. How do we know they haven't been programmed to serve the interests of these liquid creatures? Because, Marcus replied patiently, we can demonstrate our continued independence. We've provided detailed tactical assessments of the planet's defenses, complete biological analyses of the native species, and comprehensive reports on their technology and capabilities. If we were under their control, would we be giving you the tools to potentially exploit or harm them? Unless that's exactly what they want us to think. The paranoia was predictable but frustrating. Marcus found himself missing the simple trust of the underground community, where consciousness was shared openly and suspicion was unnecessary because everyone's motivations were transparent. The political debate that followed lasted for weeks. Representatives from dozens of species debated the implications of voluntary biological integration, the risks of allowing contaminated individuals to return to their home worlds, and the potential benefits of establishing formal contact with the liquid creature's civilization. "The precedent we set here will determine the future of interspecies relations," declared Ambassador Tuvera during one heated session. "Do we embrace the possibility of deeper integration and understanding? Or do we maintain the barriers that have kept our species distinct but separate?" Marcus and Zara watched the debates with growing frustration. Through their connection to the collective consciousness on Kythera 7, they could feel the patient sadness of beings who had hoped for contact and understanding, but were witnessing the same fear and suspicion that had isolated them for millennia. Perhaps, Zara suggested during one private meeting with the senior staff, the real test isn't whether you trust us, but whether you're willing to trust the process itself. Allow volunteers from your crews to undergo limited integration, enough to experience the consciousness expansion without permanent biological changes. The proposal sent shockwaves through the fleet. Volunteer for alien consciousness alteration. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and fascinating. To everyone's surprise, the first volunteer was High Current Thalas herself. "If this represents a genuine evolution in interspecies cooperation," she declared, "then the Deep Council must understand its implications fully." The limited integration process was conducted in a specially prepared chamber aboard the flagship, with the liquid creatures providing guidance through Marcus and Zara's telepathic link. Thalas emerged from the experience fundamentally changed in perspective, while remaining completely herself in identity and loyalty. I felt connection, she reported to the assembled officials. Not control, not manipulation, but genuine understanding of consciousness patterns completely different from my own. For the first time in my existence, I truly comprehended human emotional responses and motivations. One by one, other volunteers came forward. Dr. Kim experienced neurological processing methods. Captain Hendricks felt the patient, ancient wisdom of the liquid creatures. Dr. Vex discovered the passionate creativity that drove human innovation. The fear began to transform into fascination, then into excitement about the possibilities. We're witnessing the emergence of a new form of diplomacy, Admiral Chen announced during the final session. Not just communication between species, but genuine understanding through shared consciousness. The decision was unanimous. Formal contact would be established with the civilization on Kythera 7. Marcus and Zara would serve as the first ambassadors to this new form of interspecies cooperation, their transformed biology and expanded consciousness making them uniquely qualified to bridge the gap between individual and collective awareness. As they prepared to return to the planet's surface to begin negotiations for a permanent research station and cultural exchange program, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A month ago, we were strangers from different species, trying to be polite during a diplomatic mission, he said to Zara as they watched Kythera 7 grow larger in the viewport. Now we're the founding members of a new kind of consciousness, she replied, her hand finding his. Individual yet connected, distinct yet integrated. Below them, the liquid creatures flowed through their crystal city, their ancient patience finally rewarded with the promise of true contact with the galaxy's traveling species. Above them, representatives from dozens of worlds prepared to learn new ways of understanding and cooperation. What do you think we'll discover next? Marcus asked. Zara's transformed senses reached out toward the planet, feeling the welcome of the collective consciousness and the excitement of their fellow survivors who had chosen integration. Everything, she said simply. We're going to discover everything. The shuttle descended through Kythera 7's toxic atmosphere, carrying two beings who had transcended the boundaries of species, consciousness, and the ancient barriers between self and other. Behind them, the diplomatic fleet prepared for humanity's greatest adventure in interspecies cooperation. Ahead of them, an entire civilization waited to share the secrets of consciousness, community, and the infinite possibilities that emerge when different forms of life chose understanding over fear. Their survival had become something far greater than anyone had imagined. It had become the foundation for a new era of galactic civilization, where the walls between species could be transcended without losing the unique perspectives that made each culture valuable. As they touched down in the crystal city that had become their second home, Marcus and Zara stepped forward into a future where the impossible had become inevitable, and where the greatest discoveries waited not in distant stars, but in the infinite depths of connected consciousness.